Hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of Déjà, Vécu. While it is common for sequels of most video game franchises to carry over a majority of play mechanics, characters, and artistic stylings from one game to the next, sometimes a game is made that gives you that wait-a-minute feeling of having played it before while being presented as its own standalone creation. And sometimes that wait-a-minute feeling is even stronger when you realize that both those games are made by the same company. UN Squadron, released for arcades in 1989, and Carrier Air Wing, also released for arcades but in 1990, are both air combat-based side-scrolling shooting games developed and published by Capcom. In UN Squadron, you will play as one of 3 members of a special fighting team trying to stop an organization of arms dealers starting to develop weapons with the hopes of taking over the world. And in Carrier Air Wing, you will play as one of 3 members of a special team of pilots trying to stop a country called Rabu that has already conquered some parts of the planet and now has started its assault on Japan. In both games, you start by picking a pilot-jet combo from the lineup with the combat techniques you prefer. After choosing your pilot and jet combo in UN Squadron, you are taken to a missions briefing screen and then to the weapons shop to load up on upgrades if you have enough funds. In Carrier Air Wing, after picking a pilot-jet combo, you are also greeted with a missions briefing, but with an added enemy weak point map, and then to a weapons shop that has a preview window of the items you are interested in. The weapons shop will be the first sign of how similar the games are, with roughly the same types of items being listed for sale. When in-game, you will notice that both titles are very close to each other with input commands and button response. The jets respond instantly to directional changes, and the main attack button can be held for a short-timed rapid-fire barrage, saving wear and tear on both your trigger finger and the actual button itself. The attack level-up system in each game is one of the few things that separates both from each other. While both games require you to shoot all the red enemies that will drop the appropriate level-up icons, the UN Squadron's approach is to level up your jet's main attack with more power and slightly bigger projectiles, while Carrier Air Wing's approach is to have a power-up icon that rotates between colors corresponding to a type of main attack, like orange for a wide bullet wall attack, or blue for a more powerful, narrow rocket attack. In UN Squadron, the jets all have a unique pattern of combat fire depending on the jet's air-to-target design. For example, Greg's A-10 is designed for air-to-ground combat and has a smaller downward-firing split-off of its main attack, while Mark's A-6E from Carrier Air Wing is also an air-to-ground combat jet. It only differs from the others with its occasional option to purchase and use ground-based secondary attacks. Both use a health bar system, labeled as fuel, instead of the one-hit-and-die mechanic most other shooters use. One advantage Carrier Air Wing has over UN Squadron is the ability to swap the current pilot-jet combo when you continue from a death. In UN Squadron, you are stuck with your choice of jet combo after death. To pick a new jet, you will have to time out back to the start screen and begin a new game. Common in both games is the mix of well-armed enemies, from helicopters to jets, tanks and turrets, to the sometimes larger-than-the-screen stage bosses. By the end of either game, you will be well-trained in the attack patterns of your adversaries. The graphics in both games are above average with a slightly grainy look. Both use backgrounds and foreground scrolling effectively, with some of the backgrounds having some form of animation, while others are just static images. Carrier Air Wing does add a few bells and whistles to its graphics, like ground debris from the jets and a few transparency effects. Enemy projectiles in UN Squadron are somewhat easier to spot on screen during intense action sequences, with some of Carrier Air Wing's feeling more cheap-shottish by being almost invisible. Some enemy graphics are used between both games, and there is also a boss fight that is too close to write off as coincidence. sound effects of both games are mostly different from each other, making this one of the few things that sets them apart. Music ranges from stuck in your head to almost forgettable the moment you hear it. Now let's recompare the two games and score. First, UN Squadron's plot is the seen-it-before generic evil organization plotting to take over the planet with superweapons just to be the only rulers of the world. Carrier Air Wing's plot has the slight spin of an armed, somewhat religious organization that has already conquered parts of the planet, but doing so under the justification that is ridding the world of sin. Second, in UN Squadron, the jets have more of a personality and play control due to their main attacks being static, forcing you to pick a favorite to play as. In Carrier Air Wing, the jets are pretty much clones of each other, due to their main attacks being the same swappable variations, with only some of their secondary attacks as the only noticeable difference. Third, both use a Fuel for Life system, but Carrier Air Wing lets you swap out jets after death, while with UN Squadron you're stuck with your choice of whether you like it or not. The enemies and boss fights of both games can be easier than taking candy from a baby, or harder than rocket surgery with no feeling of a middle ground for challenges. Fourth, graphically and sound-wise, both games are good without really standing too far apart from each other. It is best to think of them as complementing their counterpart than trying to compete with it. In the end, we felt that UN Squadron was a slightly better game, giving it a 7 out of 10 over Carrier Air Wing score of 6 out of 10. If you like this video, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel. A ruler of the skies in air-to-air combat from Pilot. Okay, that's a sentence, but that doesn't make sense.